Good morning. So we are doing a restorative yoga class this morning. We'll do a little, some stretches with a strap near the end that are my favorites. So if you have a strap, you can put that, nearby, but you don't have to have it right away. If you don't have a yoga strap, you can, of course, use a scarf, a towel, a belt, a dog leash, all kinds of different things work great as straps. In fact, it's a possibility the dog leashes are better in general than the average yoga strap is. They have that great loop in the end. So in any case, what we are going to do is we're going to set ourselves up for a reclining butterfly pose. Now, I'm going to get a little bit fancy and put a pillow underneath my back so that I have a little bit of a lift for my spine. And then I'm going to take a rolled up blanket and put that underneath my legs so that when my knees are open, they set down, my thighs set on the blanket so that every body part that's kind of hanging out in space has a little bit of support under it. That's one of the things you want to do with restorative yoga because it signals to the nervous system that it's okay to relax, right on? So you can have a pose that you can feel as long as the body feels like it's being supported. Generally, we're going for as much relaxation as possible, right? We're all a little different. All of our bodies are a little different. So some poses you might not feel anything except relaxation. And some poses there might be a little bit of spiciness, but not so much that your body tenses up or that it's impossible to relax. Really, relaxation is the thing. Okay, so the way that I'm going to set this up is I have a pillow that looks like this, and I'm going to put that under my back with a block under the end. If you don't have a pillow that looks like this, but you have, say, a couple of throw pillows or even pillows from your bed, you can stack them up and wrap a blanket around them. Wrapping the blanket around it allows you to kind of tighten it up so that it makes it a little more firm and a little more secure. So that's the way I would work if you don't have anything that's kind of built for this purpose. Okay, so I'm going to take one block. And I like mine just a little bit elevated, but if you like yours a lot elevated, then you could put your block up a little higher. I wouldn't necessarily suggest taking it all the way to the very tippy top layer of the block because there's a lot of room for the props to get a little like out of alignment for your spine, and your spine will wind up sinking into a weird shape. So if it's a little bit lower, it's more likely that your spine will be happier with you at the end of this whole thing. So then I just put the pillow on there so that one end leans up on the block, okay? If you want it a little bit higher, you could always put a second block in underneath the center part of it, and that'll help hold it a little bit more sturdy. Okay, and then I'm just gonna take this blanket right here under my legs. So, first thing I'm gonna do is get myself onto the pillow. So I want to just align my body so that my head is supported and it feels like it's in the right spot for my low back. Usually for me it helps to put my feet on the floor, lift my hips up and kind of scoop a little bit, and then check and make sure that as that settles back into place that I like the way it feels. For me it's best to start with the blanket really close to the top of the thigh so that when I take my feet together and drop the knees open, it's already supporting the bone. And then if I feel like I don't need quite that much support or that feels a little uncomfortable, you can always slide the blanket a little further down, okay, towards your knees. And then ideally your elbows rest on the floor, but if they don't, you can stick another blanket or a little throw pillow or something like that under your elbow to find just the right spot. That's one of the reasons I don't like to prop myself up too high, is because my arms are really short. But if you have longer arms, then you'll be able to prop yourself up a little bit more. Now, once you're in position, pause and relax. It helps me to take some nice deep breaths and really focus on this kind of deep, smooth breath. every now and then, you may find that it's not quite as comfortable as it was before. So you just adjust and then come back to breathing. So we're going to stay with this pose for about 6 minutes or so. Ideally, there's a kind of sense of just slowly letting go. You can loosen up the muscles around your jaw and around the eye so that your eyes are a little kinder and your mouth is a little bit softer. So if you start to find yourself kind of going down little roads where you're thinking about stuff, just bring yourself every now and then back. Just catch yourself and then come back to the breath and being present for your body, letting go. And notice if there's like, maybe you'll notice that there's a little difference in the right shoulder versus the left shoulder, or a little bit more tension in the right hip versus the left hip, you know? So you can just sort of check in with the body. I like to attend to any places that I find that feel a little bit tight or a little bit resistant with the breath. And so I imagine the breath sort of reaching those areas and kind of with a little bit of a linger on the exhale, let that area relax even more deeply if I can. for one more minute. Alright, yogis, so we're going to take a nice big breath. Let go with a big deep sigh. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the legs out of this position. So you can put your hands on the outside just to give your legs a little support, if that would be helpful. And then I'm going to slide the blanket out up there. I'm not going to come off of this pillow right away because it feels kind of nice to me to stay here and straighten the legs out first. Now, you can certainly come off of the pillow anytime you're ready. I'm going to give my legs a chance to sort of just kind of release and shake out and and then check in with how they feel before I add another layer on. And I like noticing, like, is there a difference between the way my inner thigh feels and my outer thigh? And my legs want to stay in that butterfly shape. They were there long enough to kind of feel really comfortable that way. So if I turn them the other way, that feels really unusual. Right. And so then I'm gonna get myself into a seated position so I can get these things out from underneath my back. And it also gives me a chance to take a moment and just feel where I landed. So I like to do that sitting up sometimes, and sometimes I like to do it laying down, so you could do it either way.
Sitting up. Okay, I'm sitting up. Excellent.
Now, don't rush. So, what we're going to do next is a little bit of a side bend. Now, you can do this two different ways. You can do it as the banana pose, which I'll show you in a second, and then you could also do it using a prop. And I'm going to do it with the prop because laying on my side gives me a little bit better stretch through the side of my neck, which, especially in the morning, when I've been asleep, I like to sleep on my side, kind of curled up in a tiny, a tiny fetal ball position. So because of that, I like laying on the side because I get a little bit better stretch across the neck and the shoulder. But you can get your back just as interesting laying on your back and doing the banana pose. So the side pose, you'll need something to go under the side of your waist. I'm going to use the same little pillow, but it could be a throw pillow, or you could have even a couple of blankets. Now, if you use blankets, you're going to want to fold them so that they're sort of about the same size as this pillow, which is about like 8 or so inches wide. So it doesn't have to be exact. You just want something that, like, I have a short waist, so 8 inches is about all I can do. But if it were any bigger, it goes up all the way to my armpit, and I'm aiming for it to go from like my hips to about maybe the middle of my rib cage, maybe a couple inches under the armpit, so that my armpit kind of goes over the edge. So if you take a bunch of blankets and you fold them so that they're about that wide, and then just stack a couple of them up, you're going to get that support so you can lean over it. All right, so let me show you the banana pose first, in case you don't remember that one. So that is lay down, and then you take your upper body and kind of bend it to the side, and then swing your legs over the same way. So now this side is really stretchy, and this side is curling in, okay? So this is one option. And that is probably the option that is the least amount of props. You know, you can do that one without any bits, fancy bits. But if you have a few props, you can do this one. So what I'm going to do is put this next to my hip. Now I am on a carpeted surface with a yoga mat on top of that, so this is pretty soft. But if you have a hardwood floor or a tile floor, you might want to put a blanket on the on top of your mat so you have a little bit softer surface for your hip. Because we're going to lean sideways over this, and there's a bone right here. This is part of your femur bone. It's called the greater trochanter, and that pushes into the floor, which can be a little bit tricky if the floor is really hard. Okay, so again, I want to aim this bolster so that it's pretty much under my rib cage. Okay, so if it's too close to the squishy part of my waist, that's a little bit uncomfortable, and if it's too close to my armpit, that's a little bit uncomfortable. So you just want to get the right amount. Sometimes you have to kind of be a little bit squishy with your props. Now, some people can put one arm, the arm on the bottom down, and then rest their head on that arm, and that feels just right. Some people like to do the second arm all the way over the top. Okay, I find that can be a little bit compressive, so usually I like to let that arm rest over my hip. You could also rest it up front if you have enough pillows that you can kind of stack it up. Okay, now, that being said, if you don't like the arm as your pillow, you can take the arm out of it and put a block under there, or even another pillow, okay, for your head. So you can have anything you like. Now, I like my arm because that allows, again, what I'm into with this pose is this kind of sense of my neck being stretched out. So I just use a blanket on top of my arm. So there's a little bit more pillowiness to it. And then I try to get myself organized. Now, my legs can be any direction. So sometimes I like them all the way straight. I usually like to bend the bottom one and let the top one rest so that the bottom one is supporting the knee joint of the leg up on top. But I've got enough calf muscle that it supports my knee. You may also want to have both your legs straight so that they stack each other up. Okay. And so I've got this little gentle stretch that's going over the side of my waist and my hip and my spine. A nice little gentle stretch going through my neck. And this outer hip is there. It's not at all spicy, but I feel like, you know, it's in a different position than normal. And now we just relax. And this one is not as long a pose. We're going to stay for about 3 minutes. Because we've been here for a minute or so. So we'll stay for about 3 more. for one more minute, yogis. Take a nice big breath. If your arm is up over your head, bring that back first, and then we're gonna let ourselves gently kind of bring the legs forward. And then we're gonna sit up so we can take the pillow out from underneath our side. So you don't have to go very far, you just wanna go far enough to get whatever's under you out. Because we're actually gonna do one more pose on this side, but before we get there, go ahead and lie down on your side. And I have a little blanket here. I'm gonna scoot down just a little bit so that I can put the blanket on the floor. So I'm gonna use that in a moment. Okay, so for now, just kind of letting myself sink back into a more normal place on my side. We're gonna turn this into a twist. Now, I have put a blanket down on the floor here, and I've smoothed it out, and I'm gonna put my shoulders on this blanket because often I find when I do a twist that it's helpful to have a little bit of height for my shoulder girdle. It fits better on the floor. And then I'm gonna take the pillow that I had, and that's gonna go under my legs. I don't know exactly how I'm going to want this, but I'm going to find out in a minute. So I'm going to just put that pillow there so I can use it. And then I'm going to roll the top of my back onto the floor so that I'm in a twist. Okay? So I'm still laying on the same side, and then I rolled my shoulder to the ground. So now I'm in a reclining twist out of that side bend. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I need a little bit of support under my legs, because they don't really want to touch the ground at the same time as my shoulder. So I'm gonna let my legs kind of hook over this pillow, and then I'm gonna find a position for my arm that feels good. I like to turn my head so that I look in the same direction as my knees are pointing or going. You may want to turn your head the opposite direction, so that's up to you. And then this pillow, this blanket under my upper back just makes it a little more comfortable for my shoulders to get heavy. There's a lot of tug along my body, from my left shoulder to my left hip. There's quite a lot of tug, and same thing on the other side. So just allowing the little extra props underneath me help me stay stable. And if you like your head a little higher, you can fold the blanket and just support just the head a little notch higher as well. It's really pleasant, actually. All right, so we'll settle in and stay here for a bit. Now again, anytime a yoga pose, often these poses start out pretty comfortable, but as you stay, things shift. And so it might shift into even more comfortable, but if it shifts into less comfortable, you can always adjust the pose, okay? every now and then it's helpful to just check in and make sure the muscles around the pose, like my outer hip or my shoulder and chest, are actually relaxing and not gripping or tightening, right? Sometimes little, like underneath the radar tension can live in the body. And so just checking in, remembering to take those longer exhales and let things relax more. It's possible you're as relaxed as you're ever going to get, but if you're like me, sometimes you can carry tension in your body without even realizing it, because the kind of baseline anxiety level that you exist with is one that is in constant tension. And so one of the things I like about this kind of yoga is that it allows me the time to unpack those layers of tension and stress that I hold in my body. And ultimately let them go. We're going to stay for one more minute. Alright, yogis, so we're going to take a big breath. Now, I'm going to come out with my upper back. So I'm actually going to roll to the side, okay, rather than come onto my back. And then I'm going to sit myself up really slowly. I'm not quite ready yet, but in a second. Kind of letting my head come up last. So, come into the elbow, and then the rest of the way. And just kind of pausing. You can sit any way it's comfortable for you. But just pause for a second and see where that landed you. So we did a side bend and then a twist with the same side on the bottom. And I definitely can feel a little bit of asymmetry between the left side and the right side of my body, which I think is really interesting. Now, clearly, we're gonna do the other side. It only makes sense that we would. So I'm gonna take all my props up to the other side of my mat here. Got a blanket, and I might want that. And then I've got the pillow that I used. I'm gonna put that down. Okay, I wanna make sure I have a little bit of room for my legs. So my space is a little funny. I'm gonna angle myself a little bit on the diagonal, but hopefully it'll still translate. So I'm gonna, again, kind of lay sideways over this pillow, adjust my hip until it feels pretty good. Now again, you might have to do, like sometimes I have to do like a little kind of softening of the edge of my pillow, or I might have to, some pillows, it's helpful to throw a blanket over so that the blanket goes under the hip and over the pillow. It just depends on how that goes for you. And then I like my arm as a pillow, but if you want a different pillow, you can do that. And I'm a fan of putting a blanket right there, just so there's a little bit more softness. So I'm straightening out my legs and kind of adjusting until I feel like I've got the right angle. And then I've got my bottom leg as a support for my top leg. Feels pretty good. So again, you could put your arm over your ear. I'm not a fan of that all the time. It feels a little bit compressive to my neck. So I kind of try to find a comfortable way to sort of drape my arm over the side of my waist. Sometimes I will fiddle with the angle of that, but somewhere. And you might be doing, again, the banana pose. So that's an alternative to this setup. Right shoulder is a little bit tighter than my left. And so what's really comfortable on my left side is not always the same on the right side. I sometimes have to find a different anchor point. And once you got yourself settled, you just try to let go. Stay for a few minutes here. Again, anytime a pose becomes uncomfortable, you can adjust it. So initially that felt pretty good, but now I feel like that's a little bit better. So don't be afraid to adjust your pose. Once you feel pretty settled, just come back to kind of soft, kind around the eyes, and soft and kind around the mouth. those for about 1 more minute. Go really big. All right, so again, we're gonna take the side bend and kind of unwind it a little bit, and then we'll turn it into our twist. So I'm just gonna come up enough to get my pillow out from under there. I'm gonna take the blanket that I wanna use under my shoulders and just broaden that out so it's ready to go. Iron it. And then I'm just going to lay here for a second and let everything kind of settle. In about 30 seconds, my spine is usually ready to do the next thing. But it takes about that long for it to sort of unwind. Okay, so pretty close to that 30-second mark. So I'm going to put this pillow under my knees so that my legs are a little elevated, and then I'm going to get my shoulders and my upper back on this blanket, and then roll my right shoulder down to the ground. Now it might be your left shoulder, so whatever the one is going down to the ground, so you get both shoulders as level as possible. And that's what the pillow is for, to create a little bit of lift under the legs. You can use more than one if you need them, so that the shoulders will relax. Okay, and I'm okay with a little bit of stretchy sensation across the hip and the chest. I just don't want it to be so intense that I, in turn, tense up, right? So if the level of intensity on the sensation is too high, rather than relax, my body will strain. And so I want to relax, that's my goal. So I want enough support so that that is the circumstances are created for me to be able to relax, okay? And again, I like to turn my head towards the direction of the knees. You might like your head going the other direction. So that's a little experiment for you. Like, what does your neck want to do in these? And with all the spaces around you, what's the best arrangement? Once you get settled in, it might take more than one settling. Things might shift in a minute, but once you're mostly settled, then come back to this relaxation of your face. Letting the mouth get a little soft and the eyes get a little soft so that you have a kinder expression. It sounds sort of silly, but our nervous system, the nervous system that is responsible for our parasympathetic response, that's our relaxation response. Those nerves are also responsible for facial expression, certain things that the mouth does, like salivation, and the muscles that control the back of the eye. So when we relax our face and we bring a little kindness to our eyes and a little softness to the lips and the jaw, we actually signal to our nervous system, because this part of our nervous system is interoceptive. So it takes information from the body back to the nervous system rather than sending it out to the body. And so when we allow ourselves to soften and relax, we actually communicate back to our nervous system that we're safe. This is an important part of the practice. This is a practice that's designed to strengthen the parasympathetic response so that we have more time, more resiliency built into our relaxation response. It's less likely to jump over to a panic response or a sympathetic active response to every stimuli. And right now, because of the way the world is, there's a pandemic, there's a lot of sort of social upheaval that can be, while exhilarating in many ways, also a little bit stressful, or a lot stressful for some folks in particular, I would suggest. In any case, because of that, there might be a sort of underlying anxiety that lives in your body. And so even more so, we need to build that resiliency into our nervous system by taking time to consciously relax, let go, and get soft. So we'll spend a couple more minutes here. Seconds here. Such a really big breath. Go with a really deep sigh. And then we're going to gently sort of unwind this. So, again, I'm going to kind of let myself roll off my little pillow here. And then you could come back up to a seated position, or you could roll onto your back. So we're going to go from this pose into some stretches with the strap for our leg. So if you want to stay on your back, you can. I have to get my strap, so I'm going to sit up. But you could just roll onto your back and enjoy that. If you do sit up, let your head kind of come up slow. So what I do essentially is just let my head sort of hang out there, and at the very end, bring that back, just so there's a sense of a kind of relaxation around my head and neck. Now, if it's not too warm in your house, and you would be into, at the very end, doing this little thing that I call it a head cocoon, but the person who taught it to me called it a pod. But you can use a blanket to kind of wrap around your head and close off your ears a little bit, and even cover your eyes a little bit to create a little dark pod and or cocoon around your head for Shavasana. So if that seems interesting to you, then take a blanket, and you're gonna let this blanket hang out under your head. And what I do is I sort of stagger it. So I folded the blanket so that I've got one end that's a little bit shorter and then longer ends. And the longer ends are the loose ends of the blanket, okay? So This blanket doesn't have fringes, but if it did, the fringes would be on this side. And then I put that under my head so that the loose end side is on top, okay? So what I've got is, oops, hold on, my mat bag, okay. I know it seems meticulous, but it's worth it. Because any little wrinkle, you're gonna feel. So kind of iron your blanket out smooth. So now I've got these long, loose edges like this that I can fold over the top of my head, okay? I'm not gonna do that right now, but in a few minutes when we get to Shavasana. It's kind of great, especially in a daylight situation where it's a little bright in your house. Okay, so I'm gonna lie down on my back. I'm gonna use this pillow under the leg that I'm not using, okay, or not stretching. So once I'm on my back, I'm gonna kind of organize myself so this blanket is just under my head, and I can kind of cup the back of my neck a little bit so that feels nice. Some people might need their head elevated, and that's fine too. Looking at you, Joe. So you can have your head a little more elevated. All right. So my left leg is going to be relaxed over this little pillow. This just gives me a more relaxed sense to the part of the body that I'm not going to be doing a little stretch with. Now this is a little stretchier, so we're kind of leaning more into gentle yoga and a little bit out of restorative yoga. But I've got a strap. I'm going to make a loop with my strap because I like having a loop to hold on to. So I'm going to run the strap through the buckle. Up and over. And then I'll have a loop. Now some straps are a little more complicated. You can just tie a knot. It'll be fine. Whatever works. Okay, so then I'm going to hug in my right leg. If you can hold on to it, hold on to it. And I'm just going to spin my right foot in little circle shapes. Whoop. In both directions. My hands are not gripping onto each other very well. And then point and flex. I like a little bit of movement in the foot and ankle. Feels really nice. Kind of wake up those muscles before we get to them. So then I put the loop around the ball of my foot. Now you might want it more towards the center of your foot. The reason I like it around the ball of my foot is because I have calf muscles that need more love than hamstrings. My hamstrings are fairly loose. And so by putting it up here at the ball of my foot, it kind of drops the ball of my foot down and stretches out my calf a little bit. So we're going to stay with this pose for about 90 seconds. And then we'll do a couple, one more with the leg. Just two stretches on either side just to kind of get a little bit of our hip. We did the side bend and the twist already, so we've kind of hit the outer part of the hip. So we're going to do hamstrings and inner thigh one more time before we do our final pose, which will be a long and luxurious Shavasana. If you are out there and you hate Shavasana, this is your chance to learn to fall in love with it. Two big breaths left. Now with your exhale, we're going to go out to the side. Now, I have a piece of furniture here that's going to catch me, but if I did not, then I might want to take my pillow and put it under that thigh so I have a little bit of support. A block works great, even a blanket works really great. And so I have a little stretch on my inner thigh, but it's not so spicy that it's going to cause me trouble. And that's what I'm after. Just want to feel a little bit of kind of me anchoring. And then the other thing, if you want to do a little extra kind of core work with this, is hug the sides of your waist in a little bit and anchor the hip that's on on the opposite side a little more to the ground, and that will give you some core strengthening in the muscles that stabilize. Right? It won't give you a six-pack, but it will give you strength in the muscles that are really important. Maybe not for, taking thirst pictures for Instagram, but for everything else. We're going to stay for about another 30 seconds or so here. Every now and then I crack myself up. I think I'm hilarious. It's very likely that you don't. All right. we're going to take 2 more breaths. All right, so I'm going to exhale, draw my navel in a little bit, and then bring that leg back to the middle with a little bit of help. I'm going to take the strap off, bend my knee, and then before I put this leg all the way out straight, I'm just going to do a little windshield wipery move with it. Good. And then, if you straighten your legs out so that both of them are sort of relatively even, can you feel a difference in your 2 legs? And often for me, there's a sort of light, soft effervescence to the way the kind of skin or tissue feels. And there, sometimes that leg feels like it's longer than the other one. And I find that incredibly pleasant. So I'm a fan, but see what's true for you. All right, so I now have my pillow moved so that this leg can just relax. The one that I already did. I'm going to hug the left one in. And again, if you can't hold on to your leg, don't worry about it. Just lift your leg a little bit up toward your chest. Wherever it fits is where it fits. And then spin your foot. Sometimes our body proportions are just such that we have to do things differently. Spin your foot the other direction when you've got a chance. And you could do this for a really long time. In this case, because mostly I am just using this to sort of loosen up these muscles around my leg, my ankle and my calves and my shins, that I don't have to, it doesn't take very long for me to start to feel that warmth. Okay, so when you're ready, you'll put the strap around that foot, and maybe you need more room or less room than you did on the other side. I'm going to relax my right side because I'm feeling like this wants to come with me over to the left. So let it get a little heavier. And again, I'm sort of aiming with just a little bit more, like kind of the weight of my arm, kind of pulling my toes down so that I've got a little extra stretch in my calf muscles. You can back off by bending the knee or taking your leg a little further away from your chest. It doesn't have to be super close to you. It definitely, you don't want to feel like you're tugging right at the sit bone, right at your butt bone. If you can feel this sort of more in the middle of the muscle area, that's what we're after. So I'm going to stay for about 30 more seconds here. So I've kind of pulled my pillow over so that I can share it with this leg. I'm going to drop my leg out to the side. And then this side, because I don't have that furniture there, is more inclined to try to roll to the left. So I'm going to work probably a little bit harder with the abs on this side. But hug in through the sides of your waist and kind of let this right hip get as heavy as possible. Just trying to hold your abs connected to your body for a minute nap is a pretty good amount. It's pretty good. I find my abs are a little bit lazy and they will eventually stop contracting. I have to catch up with them again. If I check in, they're just more So you might have to check yours too. I find my quads the same way. If I try to engage my quads so that they lift my kneecap a little bit, it does not take long before if I check back in, they're not doing that job anymore. It must be a tough life being a quadricep or a hip a core muscle. So much to do. Take a break whenever the mind isn't paying attention. All right, yogis, we're going to take 2 more breaths here. And we're going to come on back to the center. Oh. And again, before I totally straighten my legs out, I'm going to give this leg a little windshield viberiness. I'm done with the straps. I'm just going to set that off to the side. You have a little bit of that tendency to want things to be neat and tidy, and you can roll your strap up while you're still doing this thing with your leg so that it'll be neat and tidy when it's put away and not a mess. If you don't have this tendency, just put the strap off to the side, it'll be fine. All right. So, I'm going to organize the pillow under my legs so that it feels just right, so that when I stretch my legs out, it feels like both of them are well enough supported. Now, the reason I like support under my legs for Shavasana is because it lets the hip flex slightly. And when the hip flexes slightly, the big muscle in the body that goes down and kind of meets up with this other hip flexor in the hip called the iliacus psoas muscle is allowed to relax. And so that muscle, if it's tight, will lift your low back up off the floor, and like small furry creatures could go under there like a tunnel. And what we're interested in is enough softness at the hip that the back is able to relax comfortably on the floor. Some people need that higher, some people don't need it at all. But you put a little bit of support under your legs, whatever amount is the right amount for you. Even just a blanket rolled up would be good. Okay, so now I've got my blanket here for my head, and I'm going to take the ends of the blanket and cup it around the back of my skull. Now, that is a really simple gesture, but what it does is just gently tug on the fascia that lives on the back of my skull, where those nerves I was talking about earlier live. Then I'm going to pick up one corner of the top layer of the blanket and kind of fold it over me like I'm doing a hospital corner. I'm going to tuck it in around my neck. Okay? And then I'm just going to roll and tuck this blanket all around my head. Now the other side, same thing. I'm going to lift up the corner, so it's like I'm making a little hospital corner on a bed. I'm going to tuck it in around my neck, and then just kind of roll and tuck it in. So what this does is it sort of creates a little bit of like an ear nuzzle with the blanket. So now it's harder for me to hear. And that, for me, is helpful in relaxing. If I can get a little bit quiet and a little bit dark. So the other layer for the blanket, that one's going to be the dark. So I'm going to pull that over my eyes. Now you want to be able to breathe, so make sure your nose and your mouth are still open so you can breathe. And then I'm just tucking that in and adjusting it so it's over my eyes. And now I have a head pod or a head cocoon, and it's nice and dark and quiet in here. I think that is a delightful. But if it's too warm at your house, you might not want to build one of these. And then we're going to relax for an inordinately long period of time. So start by letting your body kind of find that place where it feels relaxed. You might need like a crossed ankle, or you might need to lay on your side and not on your back at all. So you're going to find first, how can I relax best? And then once you've gotten that and snuggled your shoulder blades into a nice place, and adjusted the arm bone so it's just right. Take a deep breath, and as you exhale, let go with a big sigh. a side loud enough for you to hear it. You might even do it 3 times. And let yourself just float into that sense of letting go. Feel the muscles in your jaw, like right where the jaw hinges near the ear. Feel those muscles relax. Let them get so relaxed that it almost feels like your jaw goes slack and just releases away to the teeth part of it. Let the lips grow a little softer and a little fluffier, a little more kissable. Relax all the tissue around your cheekbones and your temples and across your forehead. And let the socket of the eye grow a little deeper. So the eyes themselves deepen and soften. Feel the eyes growing kinder and more compassionate. Feel a gentle smile come to your lips. Nothing forced. Just the smile that comes from being completely relaxed. The rest of the body follow suit, completely relaxed. help it. But do just notice that your body is breathing again. Well, it's been breathing. You just notice again. Hopefully it's been breathing this whole time on its own without your assistance. But when we notice the breath, it tends to deepen a little bit. And so take a couple of deeper breaths. And then with your exhale, start to wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch them apart. And wiggle them again. Stretch them apart. And then give your wrist and ankles a little movement. And you can give your whole body a stretch. Now, put my feet on the floor for a second and unwind my head pod. Oh my goodness. That was delightful. But it's awfully bright out here. Okay. So now that I've gotten that opened up, I can give myself a little hug and a back massage for the road. As you know, it's good to hug your favorite yogi every day. And then we're going to roll to the side. And I'm going to sit up. And again, I'm going to kind of take my time and let my neck be the last thing that comes up. Might even give it a little hand. So hopefully you've enjoyed this little restorative yoga Sunday refreshment. My hope with this class once a week is that you have a chance to sort of recharge your batteries before we go back out into another week. A lot of people are returning to work and things like that. So hopefully this gives you that little reset button before you go back out there, yogis. Let's take a nice big breath together. Big inhale. And a big deep sigh. And namaste, beautiful yogis.